Hi, let's go over some population calculations. So these math equations that we use to describe population are from 3.5 and 3.8. Let's get started. (1,260) deer are living on an island that is 840 square kilometers in size. What is the population density of the deer per square kilometer? Okay, so in this one we have a population. We're given an area of that population. We're asked to find population density. We're also kind of given a clue as to how to do that because it says deer per square kilometer. I know that deer and then divided by square kilometers. So let's get our equations. This one is population density. So population density is our total population divided by the area. So we're going to take 1,260 divided by 840, and that is going to give us our density of the population. 1.5. 1.5, and of course we have to include units or nothing matters. So we're going to say deer per square kilometer. Okay, now obviously there's not half of a deer, right? So this really means that for about every 2 kilometers there's 3 deer. A city with 52,000 people has 260 births. What is the birth rate, both as a percentage and per thousand? So we're going to start by taking our births. So we're going to do birth rate. So we're going to look at our crude. If we look at this, we have our crude birth rate, which is our total births divided by our population times 1,000. Okay, to get it as a percentage, right? Percent means out of 100. So we're going to take our total, our births, which is our part. So 260 divided by 52,000. What this is really going to give us is a unit rate, where it's going to tell us basically the number of births per each person. We're then going to multiply it by either 100 to get our percentage, or multiply it by 1,000 to get our crude birth rate. There's a couple ways you could go about solving this problem. So we could go straight to crude birth rate and go from birth rate to percent. So we're going to show that one just for the sake of fun. Now in a calculator you would do 260 divided by 52,000 and then times 1,000, but I kind of want to show what the numbers do per step. So 260 divided by is 0.005. That means that there's like 5,000ths of a birth for every one person. That doesn't make any sense. So we're going to multiply this by 1,000 to figure out how many births per 1,000 there are, which is our crude birth rate. So we're going to take that. So this is like 0.005 out of 1. We're going to make it out of 1,000 times. So that means that there are 5 births, right, for every 1,000. Okay, so there are 5 births for every 1,000 people. And to turn that, let's go from a crude birth rate to a percentage. Since we do that with growth rates anyways, we'll practice that. If we want to go to a percent, right, basically what we're really going to do is we're going to divide by 10 over 10. So we can just take our 5. We take our 5 divided by 10, and we're going to get 0.5%. So a couple of ways to do that, but this is one. The city experiences 12 deaths for each 1,000 people. What is the death rate, both as a percentage and per 1,000 CDR? Well, let's look at what we would do. We're going to take our number of 12 divided by the number of people, and then we'd multiply by 1,000 to get per 1,000. This one, actually, we don't need to. If I notice, it's already 12 out of 1,000. That's what CDR is the accrued death rates per 1,000 people. So we already know that the CDR is equal to 12. Now, to go from a crude death rate to the actual death rate, which would be a percentage, we're going to do 12 divided by 10, because remember, this is really like 12 out of 1,000. So we're going to divide by 10, and it's going to be 1.2%. So that means that for every 1,000 people, 12 people are dying. A village of 25,000 people has 750 births and 525 deaths. What is the growth rate for this village? Again, with most of these problems, there are several ways to go about it. And if you get to the same answer as me, that means that both of our ways were valid ways of solving the problem. What I'm going to do is I am going to subtract my births and my deaths to find my overall change. So I'm going to do 750 divided by 525. Minus. So I'm going to have an overall change of 225 out of this village of 25,000 people. So 225 out of 25,000 people. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and get my, I'm going to go to my crude, and then from there I'll go to growth rate. So to go to my crude, I'm going to multiply by 1,000 because I'm going from a unit rate of overall change per person, which is what this would give me, times 1,000 will give me my crude. Pause here if you want to check your math. So I have 0.009 times 1,000, which means that's my crude death rate. This is my crude, basically my crude rate, my crude change rate. I'm going to take that and I'm going to divide it by 10 to get to my percent. So 9 divided by 10 is 0.9%. Now you could have gone the long way and you could have done births divided by 25,000 times 1,000, deaths divided by 25,000 times 1,000, subtracted them, and then divided by 10. There's even a couple other ways. Again, this is one way to do it. Number 5, how many years will it take for the population of this village to increase from 25,000 to 50,000? In this problem, when I look at the population, I know it's asking about years, and if I look at that 25,000 to 50,000, I say, aha, that's a doubled population. So in that case, we're going to be looking at our doubling time equation, which is a population statistics equation that generally, if we are rounding the number, we use 70, divided by the growth rate of the country is the number of years it will take to double. So let's look at number 5. It says the number of years it will take for it to double. So I have 70 divided by my growth rate equals my years. So this problem goes back up to here to this village. 70 is a constant. That's a number we use. And growth rate, our growth rate from the previous question is 0.9. So we're going to do 70 divided by 0.9. That's going to give us our number of years. 70 divided by 0.9 is 77.7. So I'm going to say about 78 years. I'm just going to round to the nearest whole number. You could absolutely round to 77.8 years. Number 6, if a country were doubling its population every 35 years, so doubling it every 35 years, what is the growth rate? All right, so we've got our same equation again. 70 divided by our growth rate is equal to our number of years. In this case, our number of years is 35. In this case, I'm going to multiply. I'm going to just use r for this one for rate. To get the r out of the denominator, I'm going to multiply both sides by r, because r divided by r is 1. I end up with 70 equals 35r. To solve for r, we divide by the number it's being multiplied to. And so 70 divided by 35 is equal to 2. That means that it has a growth rate of 2%. There are 1.3 billion people living in China. China is the third largest country in the world with an approximate land area of 10 million square kilometers. What is the population density? Okay, so we've got our number of people living in China, and we have our square kilometers. All right, so we're going to go 1.3 billion people. Of course, we can use scientific notation for this as well. And 10 million. We're going to divide those two numbers. Now, if I wanted to have less zeros to mess around with, I could absolutely use scientific notation, and this is what that would look like. So 1.3 would be 1.3 times 10 to the 9th, because it's billion, divided by 1.0 times 10 to the, now it wouldn't be 6 because that would be 1 million. 10 to the 6th would be 1 million. If it's 10 million, it's 10 to the 7th. And I would put that in the calculator. Either way, I'm going to get the same answer. 1.3 times 10 to the, we can also use that button for E, it means the same thing, times 10 to the 9th. Yep, I have to put a calculator in there. Divided by, I'm going to make sure I put parentheses to make sure it's not times 10 to the 9 divided by. So just throwing some parentheses in there to make sure everything is perfect. 130. So that means that there's 130 people per kilometer squared. The way that this, you could also do this over here, is you can use some stuff that we've learned about division facts and fractions probably back in 5th grade. We can cancel out zeros. And then you end up with 130 divided by 1. So we know we have the right answer. Number 8. If there are 52 million urban residents living in China, what percent of the total Chinese population is living in the city? So we're going to use some information from number 7. We are looking for a percentage of a total, right? So a chunk of the people. So there are 52 million, which is going to be, 520 million is going to be 5.2 times 10 to the 8th divided by 1.3 times 10 to the 9th people. Again, you could write this out with all the zeros, and you could put all those in the calculator. I'm going to use scientific notation because it makes things easier to put in the calculator. So 5.2 times 10 to the 8th divided by 0.3 times 10 to the 9th, 0.4. So that is a fraction. It's 0.4. But that is not our percentage. That's a decimal, right? So that's 4/4. So we are actually going to multiply this by 100 to get our percent. So times 100. Because that's 0.4 out of 1, so we want 0.4. We want whatever that would be equal to out of 100. We're going to multiply that, and so that is equal to 40% of the population is living in a city. Let's see if that makes sense. Let's round this to 1 billion, and we'll round this to 500 million. 500 million is half of 1 billion, but because this is more than that, obviously, it's 300 million more. 40% is accurate, so I know that my percentages make sense. If 15.6 million babies were born in China last year, calculate the birth rate both as a percentage and per thousand, which is our crude birth rate. We're actually going to go crude birth rate first and then down to percentage. So it is, again, we have so for our birth rate, our crude birth rate is our 15.6 million, which is going to be 1.56 times 10 to the 7th divided by our total population of 1.3 times 10 to the 9th. We're going to take that number, and that's basically going to give us a unit rate. Basically would be births per 1,000 people, per one person. We're going to multiply that by 1,000 to get our crude birth rate. Whatever that answer is, we're going to then divide it by 10, and that's going to give us our percentage. So let's speed this up with the power of the video. All right, so we got a crude birth rate of 12. Doing these in the calculator, 12, we're going to take 12 and divide it by 10 to get to our percentage, because we're going from out of 1,000 to out of 100, and we're going to get 1.2% growth. Okay, continue on with the other problems, and we'll see you for the test.